If Seattle is content with Geno Smith at quarterback, who will they select with their 2 first-round picks in the NFL draft? Let's discuss. Okay, everybody, hello, and welcome to Draft Brothers, a Champions Round podcast. I am your host, Jeff Hasley, and I'm joined by my draft brother, Dan Turner. How's it going, Dan?
What's up? It's going well. Going well.
All right. Well, today we have on the show Mookie Alexander. He's the managing editor of Field Goals, and he's going to help us understand what the Seahawks might do in the 2023 NFL Draft. Mookie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff and Dan. I know we're in March, but football season never really stops, does it? At least NFL season doesn't really stop. The Super Bowl was 2 weeks ago, and now we're just geared up. We got Combine Week going on. We've got the draft. Well, we got free agency the week after that, and then by the time that's effectively done, we're preparing for the draft. And after the draft, we get into the schedule release, and then after the schedule release, it's camp time. The football discussion never really ends, does it?
No, absolutely. And off season is our season, so that's good. That's draft season. So let's get into it. All right. Mookie, at the top of the show, I said, if Seattle is content with Geno Smith at quarterback, what are they going to do in the draft? But first, let me ask you this. Is Seattle content with Geno Smith?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I think they're going to get a deal done with Geno based on what Pete Carroll has said and what John Schneider said at the Combine earlier in the week. They seem eager to get this one across the finish line, have it be a multi-year contract extension. It would be a continuation of Geno Smith's amazing career turnaround. But they also didn't shut the door on taking a quarterback early. So we would have a dynamic similar to what the Packers have done with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and then Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love, except this one should be a lot less drama-filled than the previous 2 instances in Green Bay. I wouldn't be surprised if they took a quarterback in the first round, but with the obvious sign that Geno would still be the starter and that the quarterback to take would be in the developmental stage, because there are a couple of quarterbacks who are projected to go into the top 10 whom I am skeptical that they would be ready to start in day one. So keeping in mind Seattle doesn't have another quarterback on the roster right now. Drew Lock's a free agent, and there is every bit the chance that he can get an opportunity to start somewhere else, like Tampa Bay, where quarterbacks coach Dave Canales went to be their offensive coordinator. I think there is a need to at least get another quarterback behind Geno Smith, but with more upside than Drew Lock.
Yeah, gotcha. I mean, I guess that makes sense because then you would have a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal, and then you can kind of, if you have to move on from Geno Smith, you at least have that. And the fact that you have 2 picks in the first round, you have that luxury that you could potentially do that. So that leads me to my next question. What do you think they're targeting here with their 2 picks at 5 and also at 20?
Well, with the 5th overall pick, if they don't go quarterback, because I would suspect C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young are probably gone within the top 4 picks, and I don't think Seattle's going to trade up. I don't think they're so desperate that they're going to re-sign Geno and also trade up to get one of those 2 who figures to be taken within the top 3 or 4 picks. So if they go quarterback, I think they go with Anthony Richardson, whom I believe is a very talented quarterback, but he's so raw in terms of his accuracy and decision-making, but he's so exciting. His athleticism is off the charts. He's really good at escaping sacks. He's got a very good arm. He's the type of quarterback that John Schneider and Pete Carroll would be interested in. But we also know quarterback is not Seattle's biggest need. And even though Seattle's made some interesting draft choices over the years, they addressed one of their big needs last year with their first pick, which was Charles Cross at number 9 overall. And so far, it's worked very well. At left tackle, he missed only a handful of snaps. He was really, really good for a rookie. So the defensive line has been a glaring weakness for the Seahawks for quite some time, especially the pass rush. They might have been 7th in sacks this year, but they were also in the bottom half in pressure rate or pass rush win rate, whichever advanced metric you want to use. So when they got to the quarterback, they got sacks, but the problem is they weren't getting to the quarterback enough for the defense to be impactful. So you look at Will Anderson and where he could land. If Will Anderson falls to number 5, that would be a potential target for Seattle. You also have Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech, and big 6'6", 275 pounds, pretty productive in his last couple of seasons in college. So I can see Seattle going for Tyree Wilson. Myles Murphy, I'm not terribly high on, but he could be an option at 5 or 20. I mean, we're in Combine week, so the draft stock is about to rise, or it's going to rise and fall for a whole lot of players. I would have said before we recorded this, Jalen Carter would have been one of the more mocked players towards the Seahawks, but given his current legal situation, I think he's off the board for the time being. So Carter aside, having a pass rusher, I think, is a dominant pass rusher that is so critical for Seattle. And secondarily would be a defensive tackle who can be disruptive in the same way Aaron Donald and Chris Jones can be. Especially Chris Jones, you can line up at end or tackle. He is just that dominant. So is Aaron Donald. What they would do at 20, I think they might go wide receiver. Now, I personally want them to go wide receiver, but they could go offensive skill position, meaning no running back. Bijan Robinson, as much as I love watching him play at Texas, Seattle doesn't need another running back. They just got Kenneth Walker. They can sign a free agent to be Walker's backup. But you look at wide receiver, DK Metcalf, still a very, very good receiver. Tyler Lockett remains one of the more underrated receivers in the league, but he's on the other side of 30. And you do have depth issues for Seattle below the second wide receiver spot. So to have Jackson Smith and Jigba or Jordan Addison from USC, I believe those could be intriguing options for the Seahawks. Even Zay Flowers from Boston College. Just having a viable third receiving option would be so huge for opening up the passing game for the Seahawks, because I feel like some of Seattle's late season struggles, both Russell Wilson and Geno Smith, has been their lack of wide receiver depth. So they could go wide receiver, or if they want a standout receiving tight end option, because no offense on the last year's deal, and Will Dissly could even be a cap casualty for all we know. Dalton Kincaid of Utah would also be an interesting one, but Seattle hasn't picked a tight end that early in a good while. So yeah, what I can eliminate is cornerback. I don't think Seattle's going to go quarterback in the first round. We've seen historically they've been willing to go in day 2 or day 3, and usually when I say day 2, I mean the third round and then after that. They've had success with Tariq Woolen, Richard Sherman, Byron Maxwell, and even some undrafted free agents. So if they go cornerback, it's going to be a little later on. Not what I've seen mocked so often on mock drafts on various sites.
Well, you bring up some really interesting names, and names that I think would be good for the fan base, for the team, for what your needs are. That kind of goes right into Dan's next question, I think.
Absolutely. So, you mentioned, the pass rush in your defense, and you have 9 picks total in this draft. How many picks would you be comfortable using on the defense, specifically, the front fours? You mentioned that even though you were 7th in sacks, the pass rush wasn't as good as you wanted it to be, and also your run defense wasn't that great either.
Yeah, I think they're going to invest as much as they can in the defensive line, but maybe not as much as people may think. I don't think they're going to go 4, 5, 6 picks deep on the defensive line, because they already have some talent on the defensive line. Uchenna Nwosu was tied for the team lead in sacks. He had 9.5, a really good signing. He's still, I think, 26 years old. So he was one of the bright spots on the defense last year. Darrell Taylor struggled a bit, but this is an important year for him because it's the last year of his contract. He was benched at times during the 2022 season, but he finished strongly, and I think he finished with 8 or 9 sacks as well. So you have those two. The interior is going to be the question mark, because Shelby Harris, who can play at end or tackle, he is, I believe, a potential cap casualty. So you've got Poona Ford, who's also a free agent, and Brian Monet tore his ACL late towards the end of last season. So I think they may be looking more towards the interior of that defensive line than they would the edge. So they'll go edge early, but that interior, especially with the lack of viable free agents, I don't think they're going to go after Javon Hargrave, for example. I believe Deron Payne just got franchise tagged by Washington. So they might go, the games are won in the trenches, and we have consistently lost in the trenches. And a valuable defensive tackle, or somebody who can work the interior of an offensive line, can be just as valuable as somebody who can beat a left tackle or a right tackle. So I believe they're going to look at both sides of the ball, because the defensive line needs work, both schematically and the fact that there's just not enough talent. There's some talent, but not enough. And even the offensive line, left tackle and right tackle are fine with Charles Cross and Abe Lucas. Left guard, you figure fine with Damian Lewis, but center and right guard are the 2 question marks here, because Austin Blythe, team starting center in 2022, just retired. And then right guard, Gabe Jackson, very likely to be released. They re-signed Phil Haynes, so Haynes could be the starter based on his deal, which is 1 year up to $4 million or something like that. But always compete, right? You can never have enough depth, and they need a new center. And you look at John Michael Schmitz, I think is his name, from Minnesota. He could be a second-round option. And you would have a really, really young, promising offensive line where Phil Haynes would be the oldest guy on the starting five at 28 years old. And he's had very few starts in his career. So as much as Seattle has been rightfully knocked for bad offensive line picks or just neglecting it entirely, perhaps they've seen the light, and we will see them forced into improving both sides of the ball. Because just look at the Super Bowl. Chiefs and Eagles. Yeah, the Eagles pass rush got shut down in the game, but Kansas City's offensive line is fantastic. The Eagles' defensive line was fantastic for much of the year, and that's how they got into the Super Bowl in the first place. So it sounds simple, it sounds so cliche, but games are won in the trenches, and that's why I think the Seahawks are going to invest. So defensive line, they will invest, but not over-invest. And then offensive line, they're going to absolutely make a pick or two to see if they can bolster the pass protection for Geno and improve the run blocking, which is wildly inconsistent throughout the year.
Yeah, I think that Seattle's kind of in the catbird seat here. You know, if we think that Geno Smith is the answer, now all they're doing now is just filling those holes. And with 5 picks in the top 83, they can definitely do that. And you made, again, some excellent points on who they might target. If you like sports and playing sporting games, download the Champions Round app. Get playing and start winning. Use the promo code DRAFTBROS for a free $10 and check out our newest game mode, Spicy Slips. If you love live sports gaming, the NBA, or you just want some extra action this NFL offseason, come play Spicy Slips. Build a 2 to 5 leg parlay of live props and win big today. Check it out. All right, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Mookie. We appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your insights on the Seahawks. And again, be sure to follow Mookie for all things Seahawks. His Twitter handle is @MookieAlexander. And we appreciate your support. So please do us a favor. If you like the show, give us a like, a subscribe, a comment. That stuff really does help out our channel. Download the Champions Round app and use the free $10 bonus code. On our next show, we talk to Jeff Risdon about the Detroit Lions draft. So stay tuned for that. Your entertainment is our passion. We'll see you next time.